Okay, when we come back, Pete Buttigieg. My guest today serves in the Biden administration as Secretary of Transportation, but he's here today in a personal capacity to talk about hitting the campaign trail on behalf of Vice President Harris and the Democratic Party. It's great to see you. Thank you for doing the show. It has been a weird couple of weeks. We had the debate, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, President Biden making this, bold decision to step back, and now Vice President Harris is the presumptive nominee. We have all been watching this from the outside. You are very much on the inside. What has this last month been like for you?
There's that saying, there are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. And that's how it's felt. Just so much turbulence, so much upheaval every day. I think honestly, inside the spaces I've been hasn't been that different from what it's like for everyone else, just as an American. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of concern. But now we're in this moment where there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of energy. One of the things that's been amazing to me just in the last couple of days is how people are rallying around Kamala Harris with enthusiasm. And I think that shift in energy, that shift in tone has been really exciting coming out of everything that we've been through.
Yeah, the vibes are good. You were on Bill Maher's show last week, and you succinctly but brutally laid out all the ways in which J.D. Vance is a fraud. As often happens with your interviews, the clips went viral because a lot of Democrats watch them and think, this guy is one of the best messengers in the party, and they want to see more of you on the campaign trail, even including potentially as Kamala Harris's vice presidential nominee. Just wondering if that's something you would consider, if you've heard from the campaign about vetting at all, and whether you need to be vetted since you're currently in the cabinet.
What I can say is I'm going to do everything I can to help her win. And I don't know exactly what shape that'll take, but I know that my job, to the extent that I'm involved in politics outside of my day job, is going to be to do everything I can to convince Americans to support this ticket. And I think, Americans already support the values of this ticket. They already agree with her and disagree with Donald Trump on so many of the issues, especially in places like the Midwest, where I come from and where J.D. Vance, I think, was intended to try to speak to. So who knows exactly what shape that takes, but I'm going to do everything I can to help.
So you're seeing reports that some Trump allies actually already regret the J.D. Vance pick. There's clips going around from his events where he just looks like a awkward goober and he's kind of bad on the stump. What do you make of the guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a regrettable pick. I mean, he's somebody who obviously has been thrust into this, not a lot of experience in office before that. Some people, very early into a Senate career, proved to be immediately to be extraordinary national level, next level leaders like Barack Obama, but most don't. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that. But, more than just his style or his fluency or his comfort on the stump, what I think is really concerning about him is how out of line he is with Americans. I think he was picked on this theory that, he's from Ohio. He has roots in Appalachia. Is this biography that's going to connect him to most Americans. But you look at his actual views, whether it's the kind of faux nature of his populism, because he's actually on board with tax cuts for the rich and has a 0% rating from labor. And just the more you look at it, the more out of touch he is there. But also, you could not have found a more anti-Ukraine person to pick to put on this ticket, which puts him out of line with even a lot of Republicans. And at a moment when the Trump campaign is trying desperately to distance itself from its own policy blueprint, which is Project 2025, I just learned that he literally wrote the foreword to a forthcoming book that might as well be entitled Project 2025, the book. It's by the leader of the Heritage Foundation. It's really kind of a popularized version of that policy manual, which is so wildly unpopular that even President Trump is claiming he knows nothing about it.
Yeah, he was a DEI pick for self-aggrandizing biographers, is what I heard. I have a pitch for you that falls in the category of easier said than done, but bear with me. You have a very big, very important job over at the Department of Transportation, but nothing is more important than winning this election. Have you considered resigning from DOT and just becoming a full-time surrogate for the campaign? Like, you live in Michigan, Wisconsin's a quick flight. We could have you home for bedtime at night. What do you think?
So, just like a lot of people who are involved in politics are running for office themselves, I'm working to walk and chew gum at the same time. Obviously, busy with the day job, which I love, but also busy doing what I can on the campaign and balancing the three things that really matter, which is doing a good job at work, doing a good job for the ticket and trying to do a good job as a dad and a spouse to Chasten, which, as you know, is the most demanding thing of all.
So I've not convinced you to quiet quit. Duly noted. So as we said at the top, the vibes in the Democratic Party are excellent right now. But you and I know that like a flood of attacks are coming from the Trump campaign soon. A lot of political strategists I know look back at the debates in the 2020 primary and the way the party got pulled to the left and worry that they were quite damaging on a bunch of issues, and it gave Republicans fodder to attack Vice President Harris. Dave McCormick, who is a hedge fund guy running for Senate in Pennsylvania, has an ad up highlighting some of Vice President Harris's comments from that primary. They include banning fracking, getting rid of the filibuster, treating illegal border crossings as a civil offense, abolishing ICE. The list goes on, but I'll stop there. You were literally in the middle of those debates, on stage. How worried are you about Republican efforts to weaponize the policy debates from 2020, and how does the Harris campaign fight back?
Well, look, what the Republicans are doing is predictable and it's unimaginative. It's what they always do for any Democrat running against any Republican, which is to say the Democrat's too far left. I don't care if it's the most conservative Democrat in history, that's what they'll say. And so that's the first thing they're reaching for now is they scramble to come up with some kind of angle. But I think a couple of things are important to remember. First of all, in that 2020 primary process, there was a lot of lanes, there was a lot of sorting us all out on a spectrum, right? The 20 of us who ran. There was very much a left lane, and she was very much not in that lane. You had Bernie Sanders, you had, in a different way, Senator Warren, but that is not the space that she occupied. So even within the Democratic Party, it's just not honest to say that she's from some kind of fringe or even from one end. And of course, she's served in this administration whose policy priorities have been in line with the mainstream of the American people, unlike Republicans, right? She, like most Americans, she's for protecting her right to choose. Like most Americans, she thinks rich ought to pay their fair share. Trump Vance is about the opposite. The other thing I want to say, though, is I don't think that attack is going to have a lot of potency given who it's coming from. In other words, nobody's going to out-radical Donald Trump, right? You got to take it led by a guy who talked about terminating the Constitution, inspired political violence against the transfer of power in this country. I just don't think it's credible, even if you do disagree with the top of our ticket on some particular policy issue. At the end of the day, if this election is going to be about who's more extreme, that is really going to be a dynamic that counts against Donald Trump.
Yeah, agree with you there. The other attack that we just know is coming is going to be on immigration. That Republicans are claiming that Vice President Harris was Biden's border czar. That is not true. She had a job where she was focused on the root causes of migration in Central America, but they're going to lay the entire situation at her feet. Immigration has been one of the worst polling issues for President Biden for a long time now. How do you think Vice President Harris can make a break from the Biden administration's record on immigration and then go on offense?
Well, she's going to lay out her own vision, her own policy, which may be similar in some ways and maybe distinguished in some ways from President Biden's. But look, I think everybody gets this is a tough issue, and that's why they're trying to lie about her role. The reality is that she did diplomacy with Central American countries and good diplomacy at that. But I think the more important thing, of course, is the fact that Trump did nothing to deal with the decades-long issue of our immigration system being out of whack. And he went out of his way to block a bipartisan compromise that would have really helped. And I think we really need to make sure there's some accountability for that. He did this not even as an elected official, as an outside force when Republicans and Democrats negotiated an approach. One that was, by the way, hard for a lot of Democrats to come on board with, hard for the Biden-Harris administration to embrace because it did concede a lot of things to the conservative position. But that's how a tough bipartisan compromise works. It was teed up. It was ready to go. If you know anything about Senator Langford, this is not a bleeding heart liberal Republican, only for Donald Trump to come in and kill it because, obviously, he needs this to stay bad. He needs the chaos to continue because he thrives on chaos.
Yeah. Trump's campaign manager, Chris LaCivita, also told The Bulwark that they plan to attack Vice President Harris for being, quote, part of the cover-up with Biden's fitness to serve. This is something you're already hearing from a lot of Republicans. Even some members of the mainstream media are suggesting there was some sort of cover-up. Do you think there was an effort to keep President Biden out of the spotlight to avoid concerns about his age? And if not, what's the best way to fight that perception?
Yeah, I think we need to distinguish between the work that President Biden has done and continues to do as president, and the idea of him campaigning, being out on the trail, and doing both of those things at the same time. And he made a decision to fully concentrate on the presidency. It's worth mentioning that he's really good at being president and has delivered more than any other modern president. There's a lot to be proud of. I know I'm proud to be associated with that. She has a lot to be proud of being part of that. And I think that's the best and simplest response. It's just, we're going to hear from the president directly, and I think he's going to continue to remind us of why he has been one of the most effective presidents in modern times. That didn't change when he decided he wasn't going to accept the nomination and run for another term. If anything, I think his selfless decision consolidates his standing as a great American president with several months to go in this presidency that I expect he will use to their fullest.
Pete, thank you so much for doing the show. Great to talk with you as always, and thanks for all the work you're doing. See you on the campaign trail.
Same here. Thanks for having me.